Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to bring you guys a word. I was reading this morning Nehemiah, and I noticed something, and I just thought it was interesting. But it's in chapter 9, verse 12. Chapter 9, verse 12 of Nehemiah. It says, "Moreover, you led them by day with a cloudy pillar, and by night with a pillar of fire, to give them light on the road which they should travel." It's interesting to me because what caught my attention is it says that God led the people of Israel during the day with a cloudy pillar. If you don't know, this passage is talking about the people of Israel. When they were leaving Egypt, they had to go through the desert. It was a journey that was supposed to take them 11 days. But because of their disobedience, it actually took them 40 years. And all throughout those years, they were led during the day with a with clouds over them, pillars of clouds over them. Because, as you know, in the desert, it gets very, very, very hot. And so if they were to have that heat over them, 24 hours, not 24 hours a day, but 12 hours a day, let's say, it was going to dry them, and they were going to get thirsty, and they were going to start hallucinating, and they were eventually going to die. They were not going to last those 40 years until they got to their promised lands. Even through their disobedience, God was trying to protect them. But I think that, what happened to them and what happens to us as well is that we're looking. At first we're so excited and we're so happy that God is protecting us and putting a cloud over us. But after a while, that cloud starts getting depressing because we look all around us and people are directly under the sun and they look so happy and it's so bright and there's so much light. And we kind of confuse the two, and we look over our heads and there's a pillar of cloud over our heads. That's supposed to be protecting us from the sun and supposed to be protecting us from death and helping us to last longer. But we look at that cloud and we start complaining and we start cursing God and saying, God, why am I never in the sun? Why do things never look bright for me? Why do things always look cloudy and gloomy, and I'm always going through something? And we start seeing that what was supposed to be a provision, what was supposed to be for protection, we start cursing God and seeing it as a bad thing. And we forget the other side. We forget the consequences of being under the sun. The same thing at night. It says that God had a pillar of fire, by them to keep them warm. In the desert, it gets very, very, very cold during the nighttime. And so to keep them warm, so they wouldn't have to feel that cold, God had pillars of fire around them to keep them warm. And it's the same thing, after a while, all we feel is the heat. We forget how cold the desert is. We forget the consequences of certain things. We forget the other side of the story, and we look at that pillar of fire and we feel like we're always in war. We feel like we're always going through the heat of battle, like we don't have a chance to breathe almost. But the other side is much worse, and we forget that, and we start cursing God. Again, what was supposed to be for protection and provision, we start cursing God against it. And the thing is that the lives of other people may look bright and sunny and beautiful. It may look like they're having experiences and things like that. But if you're not walking with Christ, the alternative isn't good. The alternative of somebody who is not under that cloud, who does not have that pillar of fire to protect them from the cold, is death. It's literally hell. Literally hell. Because at the end of it all, at the end of your life, if you don't know Christ, unfortunately you will go to hell. That's just how it is. And the consequences and the things that you have to go through are a lot stronger, a lot worse if you don't have that protection from God. That's the alternative. It looks bright, it looks nice, but the people have to fight a lot more to get to the promised land than we do. And the thing is, all of that God is doing is just to protect us. Israel only lasted 40 years in disobedience, but they only lasted 40 years because they had that fire, because they had that cloud that they were cursing against. The alternative would have been dying in a few days, maybe a month's time, maybe, if not less. And so they lasted 40 years. It's a huge, huge difference between being under God's protection and the alternative. So before you look up at that cloud that's always over you, or look at that ring of fire that's always following you, and you feel like you're always in a battle and always struggling, always going through something, remember what it's there for. Remember who is putting those things, because all of those things are guiding you towards the promised land. They're guiding you and protecting you and helping you to make the right decisions to get to where you're supposed to be, to get to heaven one day, to get to your promises that God has given you, so that you will be able to enjoy them someday. Because the alternative doesn't really look good. So before you look at all of that and you start cursing God, remember what's it there for, and start thanking Him for His provision and His protection, because I guarantee you that you would not have made it this far, you would not have been the person that you are if it weren't for God's clouds and God's fires. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. And remember to always, always be thankful for everything that He's doing, for good or bad.